Good morning. We'll be starting this morning with the Division of Finance. We'll be on page 50 of your binders. I'll turn it over to Lindsay.
All right, thank you, Lori, and good morning, Commissioners. So, unfortunately, you're starting off at 9 o'clock in the morning with the Division of Finance budget presentation, and when we're doing good in finance, we keep it pretty boring. We don't like excitement, and so this is not going to be your most riveting presentation of the day, so I apologize. I'll try and move quickly. So you have 3 handouts at your seats. They are in a pile. The first is Division of Finance. It says Division of Finance Operations is the top row. Your second document is a thin page that has to do with the arena based on the new process that we talked about when you all approved the last management agreement. And then finally is community development. So we are just going to work through in that process. So we'll kick it off with Division of Finance Operations. We also have a number of departments within finance operations. We have, of course, the CFO's office. We have accounting, budget, and purchasing. We're also going to cover budgeted transfers within the finance request, contingency reserves, bond and interest, or how we pay our debt service, interest bank arena, and then we'll switch over to the other presentations. Finance has responsibility for economic development and Wichita State University mill levy, but those will be presented in the community development's PowerPoint. So while our operations are about $8 million, we do have responsibility to input budget requests and monitor and maintain budget authority for many other areas of the county's budget. And you can see that totals about $68 million, of which our operations are only about 12% of that. So within operations, we have 37.25 FTEs within the Division of Finance itself. You can see that 7 of those are in the CFO office. In that area, we do our strategic planning, our capital planning. We do division oversight, tax system oversight, contract management. It's where our 2 internal financial auditors are located. And then also, though this may change coming up thanks to the reorganization that you all approved a few weeks ago, we do continue to have safety and risk management within the CFO's office. Within accounting, we have 17 FTEs. Everybody's favorite, we have payroll. We also pay our vendors out of accounting. We do timely completion of the CAFR, which you'll hear the presentation on next week. We also, of course, have lots of reporting and ensuring that there's accurate information that we make available to the public and to you all on a routine basis. Accounting also has the workers' compensation program within it. The budget office generates lots and lots of documents for us all to look at. They are responsible for assisting you with development of adoption of a budget adoption of a budget through a statutory process. And then they also make sure once that budget is adopted that we all adhere to it and adhere to what your limitations and policy goals are. Finally, purchasing has 8 FTEs, and of course, they have been very, very busy lately trying to procure PPE and everything else associated to COVID-19. We are a very busy group. I think we produce a lot of good work, but again, we're maybe not the most exciting when things are going well. So we do all of that with a budget request of $8.1 million. I think it's important to talk about this slide though. If you look at 2020 revised, you'll see that our 2020 revised budget within the Division of Finance is $9.4 million. That is very, very high. That is driven by 2 primary reasons, and those reasons are outlined in the bullets that you'll see, or the asterisked areas you'll see underneath. First, we have the transfer to the CFO's office related to the fire that occurred in this building back in January. We did anticipate costs of up to $650,000 to do that. We are currently reviewing some of the invoices that have come in, and we expect to be able to close that project out and seek insurance reimbursement for the bulk of that soon. The next issue, obviously, is COVID-19. So we have, through the date of this budget presentation, we had $936,000 transferred out of reserves into our budget to do the purchases and try and acquire all the equipment that we needed. Also, that was the original source where Hero Pay was paid from, although we've subsequently learned that the CARES Act can pay for that, and so those costs have now been moved out of finance. The actual costs, not the budget authority, the costs have been moved out into our new stimulus fund for reimbursement. In the 2021 request, we are basically flat with where we started 2020. However, we have increased contingencies. So our 2020 budget was developed in 2019 based on 2018 actuals. Well, you all know that last year, 2019, was an active year for risk and for workers' compensation. We came to you toward the end of the year on both of those to ask for additional budget authority. And I'll be honest with you, with COVID-19, I'm probably a little more unsettled than usual going into 2021. And so while we aren't forecasting to spend it, we are asking for additional budget authority to be added to the Risk Management Fund contingency and also to the Workers' Compensation Fund contingency. And of course, those things are brought to you through your counselor's office on the risk management side for settlements. Also, if there's insurance claims, the insurance premiums, we'll bring those to you through bid board. So you will be aware throughout this process if we need to actually access either of those. But that will be an increase over our 2020 adopted budget. So moving to budgeted transfers then. So we talk about transfers in two ways at Sedgwick County. We have budget authority transfers where we move budget authority from one area to another. And then we have what are called interfund transfers where we actually move cash as an expense from one fund and as a revenue source into another fund. So simply moving money within the organization. And so that does require approval from the commission to actually execute those. And so what you'll see on this slide is the total request hasn't changed. We're at 1.5 million. However, we are increasing the amount dedicated specifically to transfer out to fund the risk management budget, again, because our budget now is based on our experience from 2019, which had a larger experience. And so as we do our forecast, that's our baseline as we go forward, and so that's what we're using as our baseline for this. So shifting to contingency reserves, I will tell you, I will talk through these individual contingencies, but I do foresee some of this changing. State budget law does say 10% of a fund may be allocated for contingency, and so we're going to make sure, especially with flat budget, if there are any reductions, that we're not exceeding that 10%. But what you'll see on this slide is 2020 revised. So what 2020 revised reflects is the movement of that budget authority that's already gone to other departments. We do not ever spend directly out of a contingency. It's simply a source of budget authority for us to move to the right department so that we can accurately reflect where those expenses are going to be paid from. And so the 2020 revised of 21.8 million reflects the use of contingencies already this year of 2.1 million. Again, a large portion of that is associated with COVID-19. Another large portion of that is for the fire in the courthouse. Also, earlier this year, you all approved addition of positions for EMS, so that's included, and also ICT-1 costs. So those are reflected in transfers out from here into the appropriate budgets. Now, the 2021 request is increased even over our adopted budget. So our operating reserve went from 9 million to 15 million. Again, this is one where you may likely see a change between now and the end of the budget process where we see exactly how much we're allowed to have. Again, this is based on, we don't know what 21 will bring. I don't know that we'll always want to leave the budget authority this high in a contingency, but certainly we have seen how quickly we can consume resources, and we don't want to be in a position to have to readopt a budget because that takes a significant amount of time. And so we want to try and have a larger contingency, at least for 2021, until we kind of see what life looks like. So BoCC remains at 350,000. The public safety contingency remains at 2 million. The rainy day reserve remains at 10 million. We have added a new technology contingency largely because of things like Odyssey and other things we don't know that are coming, but we do anticipate some costs associated with that, so that is in there at 1 million. And then another one that probably will change is this compensation and TRB contingency. We did have this in, it did house the budget authority for the 1.25% compensation adjustment for 2020. Because it was a flat budget, we included it for 2021, but as we move through the process, we'll talk about what the appropriate level of backup budget authority is to have there. So this is just our starting point. So we'll move
Lindsay,
to bonded. Oh, I'm sorry.
Just a quick question on
Okay.
the contingency reserve.
Yes, sir.
Maybe it's just a typo. Was that on rainy day? 9.3 million to 10 million. Got two questions. What's usually our rainy day balance that you'd like to keep about?
So in terms of budget authority, 10 million is
Okay.
probably what we'd want, because that is, it's restricted by policy how we can use that.
Okay.
The operating reserve is much more flexible. It gives you all much more control. There's no policy directive. It's just controlled by, if we need to move $250,000 out of it, it comes to you for that discussion.
So rainy day is just for emergency things, maybe like the fire and things like that.
Exactly. So that was the use for this, the 650,000 from where we started the year. We went from 10 million to 9.35 million in the revised budget because we transferred 650,000 from the rainy day reserve to the CFO's office to pay for that.
In the last column, is there an extra 3 in there on that percent change?
Yes, there is.
Oh,
Thank you for catching that.
why just 33% of it? That doesn't look like 30.
No, that's not, you're correct. Thank you for catching that. I apologize for that
Sorry,
error.
I just was making sure. I was really, the first 2 questions were important. The last one was footnote.
Well, thanks for keeping me on my toes.
That's all right. Thank you.
Okay, bond and interest. This is the county's debt service. Again, this comes out of a specific fund. And so what we show on this slide is contractuals and then also debt service. So the debt service, though, we've broken out in 2 parts so you can see a distinction between what we intend to pay for interest and what we intend to pay for principal next year. So we do know that you all have already authorized work to proceed to be funded with bond proceeds totaling $4.05 million for road and bridge work. We also have a project that's been completed and is now ready for actual assessment for Sharice Woods. That project also had been approved, I think, a year or 2 ago. And so we anticipate a relatively flat debt service budget next year. We'll keep our contractuals at $20,000, and then you can see the difference between interest and principal as some of the older debt service falls off and new debt service comes on. And when we talk on Tuesday about CIP, we can get into any of those details that you may want. I'll have all of that information with me. So shifting gears a little bit on you, away from just the normal finance operations. As the contract administrator for our management agreement, I also have the responsibility to input the budget request for the Interest Bank Arena. And so you can see their mission, it has not changed. And so we'll just get to their budget request. So the biggest portion of their budget request has to do with CIP. You can see it is much less in their 2021 request than what was in 2020. Again, for 2020, we had the scoreboard and the LED lighting within the bowl, the concourse of the, or not the concourse, the actual bowl, the actual arena itself. So just an update on where we are with those projects. The current scoreboard is basically on the ground. They're going in and putting in the cables for the new one. They'll be on site later this month to put that in. It's in the process of being manufactured now. They did, of course, go through the competitive bid process that we require in our management agreement. Same thing with the lighting. Because of some downtime they already had planned when they had concerts and things, they'd already planned to have this work done now, so it's already substantially in progress. Going into 2021, you can see this thin sheet that's in your packet. So if you remember during the management agreement discussion last December, we said we would change our process and we would bring to you these requests. So this is what was submitted as a part of the arena's asset replacement program as of October 1st, 2019. That is how the management agreement works. It doesn't quite line up with our budget deadlines, unfortunately. So this is the request as it stands today. We will, of course, work with our internal committee that's been formed, which is made up of Tom, myself, and Karen Powell, and we'll talk with them about these requests and bring something to you in discussion later this year. But for now, what's inputted in this budget is $1,030,000 for capital improvements for next year. You can see how those are broken out, and if you have the details, I'm happy to provide those to you. But certainly that's less than the 4.025. You can also see a decrease in the contractual budget. We start out with that contractual budget at around $550,000 each year because that's what we believe we will wind up paying out of the naming rights back to the arena for invoices. But as we go through the year and emergency repairs come online and are approved, that is done on a case-by-case basis, and so that budget authority will increase, and that's what you see reflected in 2020. Now, the other thing we need to talk about just briefly today, because we're not anywhere near, I think, having a recommendation for how to do this, but in the management agreement, we did say that we would match the $1.50 facility fee that the arena is now earmarking for capital improvement. Obviously, some tickets have been sold through 2020, but many concerts are being pushed out or maybe even pushed to 2021 because of COVID-19. And so that could reflect some pretty significant change in the facility fee revenue that's generated. And so it's on all of our radars. We just simply don't know what it looks like. At the time, we had an estimate of $250,000 at the most because this was a 10-year anniversary year, but we did already have some concerts that were booked that weren't going to allow those fees. And so we will still need to talk about a way to fund that match. And as we move through the year, we'll keep you apprised of what that's looking like and what concerts are looking like at the arena so that we can have maybe a more realistic idea of what that will really result in terms of revenue to the arena reserve. So, questions on any of that I can answer.
Why don't these totals add up?
Yikes.
On the interest.
Boy, I really goofed up those last two slides. I will get you a revised presentation. I am so sorry. That is, I made sure to update the contractuals and capital improvements, but then I didn't go in and update the totals, so I apologize.
You think the contractuals and cap improve is, those numbers are accurate?
Yes, and I will, if you can bear with me for 1 second.
It's on page 388 for the arena in your book.
388. That's one of the bigger books that we have. So Lindsay, while you're looking at that, my comment is, it seems like this, and as well as many of the other presentations we're getting, everybody's got their expenses in line. We just don't know what the revenue's gonna be this
Right.
year.
That's exactly right.
So,
Well, and what we're starting with is a base budget, a flat budget of expenditures. And that's not to
That's-
say that we won't need some reductions in those areas too as we move through, but that's what Tom was talking about on Wednesday, was possibly having that reduction.
Yeah.
So, if
And
I can
that's-
point you to page 388, you will see contractuals and you will see capital improvements outlined. And so the grand totals are there at the bottom. So for 2020, the real total should be $4,649,084. And the real total for 2021 is $1,580,000. And I could not begin to tell you how sorry I am about that.
where's that number at, you're saying? 4,649,000?
And the purple.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you. Any more comments, questions, everybody?
It's been a long week, Lindsay. It's all right.
It has, and thank you, but that's still not what you need from me, so.
I'll want to add here, normally when we come into you all, we've had dress rehearsal already.
Yes.
We haven't had dress rehearsal. This is it. So you're going to get
That's okay.
some,
Well, thank you for
rough
being nice, but that was just not good on my part, so I do sincerely apologize to you all.
It's okay.
Nope, you definitely can. So, that was not a highlight of the day. I did keep it interesting, more interesting than we thought, so. Okay, we will transition to community development in the interest of time. I'm sorry, unless there are other questions, I didn't mean to cut you off. Okay, so looking at the community development program then, so a couple of these are not necessarily requests that finance has responsibility for, but in the interest of trying to keep things simple, we're just doing a single community development presentation. And so you can find this in your budget books behind the community development tab. Starting on page 400. So for the Extension Council, the mission is to be they are dedicated to a safe, competitive food and fiber system and to strong, healthy communities, families, and youth through integrated research, analysis, and education. I think you all are pretty familiar with the types of services they provide. It is probably worth noting that the Extension Council is comprised of 24 elected members. You can see that on slide 4. And each of those 4 program categories that were referenced above are represented by 6 members. And then there is an executive board from that group that is elected. So I know that is typically a source of conversation we have here. And so just a reminder that that is how that work is actually conducted. So the county does pay a contractual amount to Extension That is plugged in at a flat level of $825,481. That is precisely the same amount that they would receive in 2020. And so that is the budget request for Extension Council, and I am happy to try and get Tim on the line if you all have any specific questions about services for them. Okay. Economic development. This, of course, does reside within finance, and this is something that we are responsible for preparing the budget on. The mission is to develop and sustain a strong and diverse regional economy by working with regional partners to attract and grow talent, enhance opportunities for businesses to retain or attract new jobs in the region, support healthy, vibrant communities, expand the county's tax base, and promote initiatives to enhance our quality of place. And so that was updated a year or two ago, and so I just want to make sure that one is on your radar. There are a number of different projects that economic development typically works on. Right now, Brent Shelton has taken many of those duties with him, but he does also have support from Kyle Fiedler, who is the economic development analyst, although right now he is spending an awful lot of his time trying to provide the support through the EOC. So that budget request is mostly flat. You can see a significant decrease in personnel. That is largely because Brent got promoted out of his former position, and so that position was in the budget at the minimum rate for that grade, and so that is the single reason for that. The contractuals are almost flat. You can see that there is a slight adjustment to commodities to make that more even, and those dollars just went up to contractuals. So looking at community development, community programs, there are 2 programs funded through this budget. There is the Wichita Transit Program that operates a bus line for Oaklawn, and there also is a small amount of funding that goes to the Mediation Center. And so altogether, those totals are $46,795. Of that, $8,000 goes to the Mediation Center, and the remaining $38,795 is in there for Oaklawn Transit. So finally, the WSU mill levy. Again, state statute put in place a 1.5 mill levy for City of Wichita residents decades ago. Fewer decades ago, but still decades ago, the county and the city entered into an MOU where the county levies that on behalf of all Sedgwick County, and those funds then are remitted directly to Wichita State University, although we do use some funds before it gets to them through an agreement to pay for the debt service on the experiential engineering building that was constructed basically using the county's PVC some time ago. You can see that their 2021 request is up only because our assessed value is anticipated to be up. And you can see they have not yet told us how they will precisely spend those funds, so we took 2020 numbers and used that as the baseline. I know Lorian's been coordinating with them about revising that budget request, and so we'll have more precise information for you when we get to the recommended budget. But we do expect this year for that number to be just above $9 million. And again, that 1.5 mill levy is flat. It's not something that's technically adjusted. And we do include an additional $300,000 in their budget, just in case our collections are higher. We still have to remit that because it is a property tax supported fund. It would require us to entirely adopt a new budget if we wanted to do that. And so for simplicity, we include an additional $300,000 of budget authority there for essentially a contingency. So that completes my presentations. And again, I apologize for my errors. And are there other questions or information we can get for you at all?
Yeah, one question. So this year, I'm anticipating probably some property tax delinquencies that might increase this year because of COVID-19. If that happens, does the payment to WSU reflect that? Okay.
Right, we only pay out actuals received.
So, okay, thank you.
Everybody else has been briefing 3%.
You're exactly right, and I'm sorry, I did not bring my handout down for you. So our 3% reductions include, note they do not touch personnel. Our 3% reduction would first be eliminating our forensic audit, which is a policy and procedure review. The next reduction would be eliminating our Socrata program, which does our open budget and open spending. We also would reduce our purchasing contractual budget, which is where we pay for contractuals. And then finally, we do have some excess budget authority within our revenue management program, just based on savings associated with convenience fees and all of that. And so all told, Lorian, do you remember what my grand total is?
Look here. 127,513.
Thank you. I would go dig through my pile up there, but
And in the Echo Devo that you briefed, does that include all of the money that we give to people like GWP and
Yes,
so
sir.
forth? Are we asking them to look at any reductions?
I have not yet. I don't know if Thomas had a separate discussion.
We have not yet, sir.
I was just on the Greater Wichita Partnership call this morning, and Secretary Tolan, it's Tolan, right? Not no Tolan. He was announcing that there's some very aggressive plans within the state, and even in international relocations, things like that, touting that Wichita clearly is the center for advanced manufacturing and some other things that he was referring to. He didn't say anything specific, but it appears that they're approaching full blast ahead, which is good news. But we can assume that there's going to be some things coming at us probably in the near future.
And Brent, I don't know if you're on the line, but would it be worth maybe having a quick update on what the task force is doing related to economic development on the CARES Act funding?
I'm here.
Aaron? Yes, sir, now we can.
Hi, Brent.
You can repeat the question because I'm only able to pick up what you're saying, Lindsay.
Okay, so I think Chairman was talking about how Secretary Toland from Commerce is talking about how there's some robust development that's happening. And that prompted me to think about your work that you're doing with the Greater Wichita Partnership and others on the task force. I think maybe the repurposed Air Capital Commitment Group. And so I didn't know if maybe you could give an update on where we stand with the types of work that you all are doing.
Okay. Well, there are two different task forces that are underway. One is the community group that was stood up when we had the 737 MAX layoffs, and that is now pivoted to the COVID task force. And that group meets on a weekly basis, and they get updates in terms of from the county in terms of what we're doing to combat the COVID crisis and so forth. They have been instrumental in helping us secure some PPE. They worked with us to identify local manufacturers that in a couple of cases have been stood up to produce products for us. We've got Brad Crisp has worked with another engineering firm to vet some of those offers and so forth. So that's helped in that respect. There's another group that is meeting on a weekly basis. And what we're trying to do is to determine what the economic recovery for our region looks like when we begin to come out of this pandemic crisis, and looking at sources of federal funds, grant opportunities, and different things to do so that we position ourselves for the economic recovery. And you saw a document from that group about a week ago. It talked about different industry sectors that we want to try to attract business, job creation, and so forth. Maintenance, repair, and overhaul is one that we've looked at the either the Eisenhower Airport or other airport facilities that we have. Our workforce development center secured a $1.9 million grant that's going to be used for retraining and a lot of different training opportunities. So we're looking within that group to coordinate a community response or a regional response We're looking for other sources of revenue to help us position ourselves economically as we come out of this crisis. One of the things that we've seen is that if you looked at numbers yesterday, the national unemployment rate now is 14.7%. We're at over, I think we're at about 26% in Sedgwick County. So because of the two big events that we had with the problems with Boeing and the 737 MAX, and then now with COVID, we've been hit harder than other areas. We're looking at a tougher time coming out of the second wave of this because manufacturing probably gets hit harder in the second wave than some other sectors, and we're highly dependent on that. So that's maybe more than you wanted, but I'm trying to sort of a nutshell of what's going on.
Yeah.
That's great info. Thank you, Brent.
Yeah, well, it's helpful that, I mean, we're all wrapped up in this crisis right now. But it's nice to hear that there's some still future planning and future hopes going on, it was good therapy for me to hear, for sure.
It's very reassuring.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions I can answer?
Thanks, Brent, and thanks. I don't see any more questions, so
Okay.
appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Next, we'll hear from the county counselor's office. We'll be on page 23 of your binders, and Mike Pepoon will be here to present.
Tony, could we get those TVs on? Could we get the TVs on as well? Good call. Oh, Aaron, thank you.
It's right here.
What?
See, what's good? Some coffee. There it is. Anyway.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. I know. Happens every year.
Yeah. I get the itchy eyes. I don't get the sneezes, but I get
Wash my hands and this.
eyes get crazy. Mr. Pepoon, how are you?
I'm fine, sir. How are you doing?
Thank you. Fine.
You guys ready to begin?
Yes.
Thank you. Mike Pepoon, County Counselor, here to present the County Counselor's Office budget. Before I get started, I'd like to thank the people that really put this together. My Chief Administrative Person, Alicia Madison, who's outside in the hall, I thought was going to be in here to bail me out, but apparently she doesn't want to be associated with me, and she worked very closely with Karen Powell, who also worked on this budget, and Karen and Alicia do the day-to-day budget, handle the day-to-day budget matters in our office. I'd also like to thank our new budget analyst, Elizabeth Thornbrew, who's been very helpful in working with us to try to get our budget done this year. County Counselor's Office mission and services to provide high-quality, nonpartisan legal and services to the county commissioners, elected and appointed officials, divisions, and advisory boards. KSA 19-247 defines the duties of the county counselor. Our primary duty is to represent the Board of County Commissioners, but we also represent the county manager, all of his departments, other county elected officials, and different boards, so long as those people don't conflict in any way with our representation of this board. Going through our, and this is primarily designed to go by funds and such and cost centers, but our administrative functions of the office, I believe most of my salary and our deputy comes out of this, and of course deals with the administration of our office. And that would handle that. The mission and services that we provide opinions, both verbal and written, to you and all of the different county departments and elected officials. We represent county officials in court proceedings, other administrative proceedings. We review contracts, number of contracts, on a daily basis for all the different county departments. And when available and able to do it, fully staffed, we try to provide training for different departments as well, to help avoid liability for the county. We have a Sedgwick County Court, which you're all familiar with, which is part of our budget. This came out of some legislation in the late 80s, 1988, dealt with code for enforcement of county codes and resolutions. This court was developed to enforce county resolutions because of the frustration at that time of not being able to adequately enforce the laws that you would approve. And the county court is a court that only deals with fines, doesn't deal with jail time as a punishment. And really the purpose of the county court is to have people be in compliance with the different kinds of resolutions that you adopt for health and safety, security, parking violations, animal control, those kinds of matters. And it's run partially on the fees that are collected and the fines that are collected from that court. Next slide, County Counselor's Office Mission and Services. This deals with external counsel and legal expenses. Part of our budget that we have is used to hire outside counsel. We handle a number of litigation matters in-house as well. Kevin Stamper in our office currently has 19 lawsuits and claims that he's working on and overseeing. 18 lawsuits have been sent to outside counsel. These are the more complex legal matters that we have to address and don't have the appropriate support staff to, or legal personnel to handle inside the office. And Kevin also works very closely with our workers' comp lawyer. This doesn't include those kinds of claims, a number of claims that he's either working with risk management and people in finance, or with our outside counsel, Bill Townsley, Fleece and Gooing on workers' comp matters. Quality performance, a survey was done a few years ago in which satisfaction survey showed that the office was getting very good ratings. We also, another position in our office, handles and works very closely with the appraiser's office, Patricia Parker. And as you can see here on this slide, last year, commercial property were appealed to the total amount of about $184,630,000. Of those that we were able to work out and settle and retain $158 million in appraised value, which is roughly 86% of what was appealed from the appraiser's office. Our budget request. Of course, this was put together by the budget folks, but we're a small department, but we're asking for basically monies from the property tax funds for general legal services and county court operations. The budget we were presented with this year showed a change of about a minus 1%, I believe, from the 2020 revised budget to the 2021 requested budget that we have. The revised budget for last year was $1,752,836. Our beginning request this year is $1,731,223. That shows how those monies are broken down, different funds, personnel, contractuals, and commodities. And summary again, from all funds going from $1.752 million to $1.731 million. We've been asked to propose a 3% reduction in our budget. Our proposed reduction would include taking, to reduce it by 3%, we'd have to reduce it $51,937. All of this is intending to come out of our contractual funds, and a good portion of that, or about 17,000 of that, deals with out-of-state travel, training. We're required each year to have continuing legal education, 12 hours, which includes 2 hours of ethics. We intend to do all of that much cheaper locally, even though a lot of these other conferences are very valuable, and the quality of the legal education is outstanding. But obviously in these times, we're going to cut that, and then generally we're going to spread the costs for the additional $35,000 out of just different expenses in our contractuals, recruitment expenses, our equipment repair, professional and legal expenses, which deal with providing like deposition costs and all the other expenses that come about for handling lawsuits. But we think we can take that 3% out of that budget. And I believe, and I think Lindsay can attest to this, we've been coming out under budget for the last couple of years anyway, several years. So I think this is a very manageable reduction on our part. Any questions?
Mike, tell me, I didn't mean to jump in unless you guys have one, but when we have settlements for various minor or even major, does that come out of your budget, or does that come out of reserves, contingencies?
Take a quick stab at it, and I'll let Lindsay. And I should have thanked at the beginning Lindsay too. She's very patient with me and my understanding of the budget.
She's your patient?
No, she's patient with me. We have a very small settlement fund in our budget. I think it was $10,000 maybe last year, or we're requesting it be reduced to $10,000. Typically handles like missing property in the jail and things like that, very, very small things.
Okay.
Most of the settlement funds come out of our tort claims fund or, budget to finance has. And Lindsay can explain that in more detail if you'd like.
So that's that risk management budget that we had talked about, and that's one of the reasons we're increasing the contingency, because we have seen maybe some steeper settlement costs than maybe what we used to see. So just to make sure we're covered for that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions?
Questions?
Wow.
Thank you, counsel.
Thank you very much. Now send Mr. Spears in.
Our next presentation will be from Public Works. We'll be starting on page 244 with the Highway Department, and Mr. Spears is here to present.
Morning.
We got something for you to sign in the North Junction.
You did.
Is it good news, David?
Yeah.
Is it good news? What he needs to sign?
Yeah, it's support for the North Junction with the
Nice.
city
Yeah.
combination.
Right.
Thanks, Jim.
Do you want, let me have somebody make copies. Let me have copies so they can all
Thank
have
you.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Lovely to see you.
Good to be here.
Lots of online meetings.
Are we ready?
Yes, sir. We are.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, David Spears, Director of Public Works, here today to talk about the 2021 budget. I want to say that online, we have several people to have a great support system down at Public Works. So Susan Erlewine with Environmental is online. Scott Lindeback with Storm Drainage, Stream Maintenance, he's online. Mark Furry, Noxious Weeds, he's there. David Floyd, our controller, is online. And then Gina Morgan, who takes care of our personnel, she's also online. So we have a great team down at Public Works and great support system. And Jim Weber, I didn't mention him. You saw him. He's sitting right here. So Public Works, our mission and services. So the mission is to efficiently manage county transportation infrastructure and local natural resources in a manner that supports a safe, secure, and healthy environment for Sedgwick County residents and businesses. So in today's presentation, we have highway, noxious weeds, storm drainage, and environmental services. The mission and services for the highway is provide for safe and efficient transportation on the Sedgwick County road system by performing effective preventive maintenance, completing emergency repairs in a timely manner, and by reconstructing roads and bridges as required. And as most of you know, we have approximately 600 miles of county roads and connecting links that we take care of. We manage over 600 bridges, and we also manage approximately 15 major construction projects per year, and we coordinate with KDOT and local communities. We have a great relationship with KDOT and with all 20 cities in the county. Our operation is supported by consulting engineers and a variety of highway and bridge construction contractors. So there you can see our budget. I don't think it's important to go through every line, but just down to the bottom line, you see a modest increase of 0.45%. Noxious weeds. The mission is to promote and perform sustainable noxious weed management practices and maintain or improve agricultural productivity in Sedgwick County. So we educate and assist property owners. We inspect and map over 400 properties known to have critical noxious weeds. We provide herbicides at a reduced cost to encourage landowners to control noxious weeds on their property. We inspect and treat over 2,450 acres of county property and right-of-way for noxious and common weeds. We respond to complaints and requests for inspection. And we inspect and treat 1,670 acres of KDOT managed property and right-of-way under contract with KDOT, which they pay us for. So there's that budget, and it's a modest increase of 1.1% to $542,293. Storm drainage, where Scott Lindeback's doing a great job there. I won't read the mission. It's the same as for the roads. It goes hand in glove with the highway mission. But the services provided, they maintain county drainage infrastructure, fund city, county flood control operation, and then there's targeted maintenance on natural stream systems. That's our stream maintenance folks that do that. And we do stormwater plans, studies, permits, and projects. You can see the budget there. Probably one thing I should mention on note number 1 by contractuals, that it has increased for electrical expense. And this is a rate increase by Evergy, and it's bumped up quite a bit for the electricity for the pump stations on the flood control, and also the one pump station that we take care of up on North Ridge Road. Environmental resources, mission and services, and that's Susan Erlewine's department, and she does a great job there. The things she does are very popular with the community. The mission to enhance the quality of life in Sedgwick County through conservation of water and natural resources. waste minimization, coordination of solid waste management, and provide environmental education, special projects, and services to citizens, businesses, and local governments. So the environmental resources administered programs delivered for the community and internally by staff includes provide county stormwater permit compliance through water testing and field work, provide county departments hazardous chemical compliance, inventory, and guidance, research environmental regulatory compliance in response to special projects. This is like groundwater, renewable energy, county water wells, etc. Work with the Conservation District on best management practices to reduce surface runoff and pollution. Solid waste programs delivered for the community by staff includes provide solid waste management, annual solid waste plan updates, solid waste facility inspections, illegal dumping disposal, special cleanups, storm debris management, waste minimization, and education per solid waste plan. We develop and manage solid waste special projects like the e-waste, tire collection, bulky waste coupons, Christmas tree recycling, drug drop-off locations, etc. And we provide the household hazardous waste facility and remote locations, one in each district per year. And then we also have the storm debris contingency fund. So there is the budget. It's actually going to be a decrease in 2021 of about 0.81% down to $2,452,588. So there's the division summary for all of them. Highway, weeds, storm, environmental resources. See that. And then I want to talk just a little bit about the 3% cuts we were asked to look at for each of those. You can see the highway total would be 317, weeds 13.1, storm drainage 64,850, and environmental resources 4,000. Now the impact is what's important to talk about. So almost all the cuts in storm drainage would land in the joint flood control operation requiring negotiation with Wichita. See, we're supposed to pay 50% of that. So we usually get with them and that's what we do. So it would be odd if we had to ask them to lower it, but I suppose those things could happen. The cuts in noxious weed would have to be in chemicals. That's about all they have left to cut. We have to reduce the amount of chemicals that we buy. Cuts in environmental resources would reduce the ability to perform water quality testing required by KDHE for the county stormwater permit. Then highway is a little more extensive. Have here a whole list of things that we would cut, including building repairs, custodial supplies, equipment lease rental, office supplies, also talking about trips that people take and that sort of thing, cutting a lot of that out, unless it's for certifications that they have to do their job. And also, we're noticing now, though, with the COVID-19 that, all of the trips have been canceled, but now there's a lot of webinars. So I think we're looking into doing a lot of webinars now. And that'll reduce the cost from hotels and all that. Software, we can reduce some of that. And, of course, like I just said, the travel expense. So that's all I have to present. And Jim Weber is here to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you for the presentation. I know that we had an e-waste collection event scheduled. So have we discussed when those will be rescheduled, if at all possible? Or will we get briefed on that?
Yes, you
Okay.
will. It is going to be rescheduled. And I'll let Susan say something. And she may not have been able to. I was watching this yesterday on the WebEx, and the only person you can see is the person up here and can't hear any questions. So I'm going to repeat. Okay. Susan, if you're online, would you please answer the question about when the e-waste is going to be rescheduled?
Yes, David. Working with the contractor who's from another state to find a date that works best for both of us. We're hoping for sometime this summer to have the e-waste event. and it will be well advertised in the local papers and Facebook and news releases. So we're anxious to get that done. We've had a lot of calls from people wanting this event.
Thank you.
She said, thank you.
Commissioner Dennis. I guess we should be aware, we got to speak into the microphones, and maybe that'll help everybody.
David, only one of your budget areas do you show debt service, and that's under environmental resources. What is it there, and why isn't it under any of the others if you've got it there?
We showed what, excuse me?
A debt service of $80,572 for
It's the
20.
Noxious Weeds bond, the building on, bonds on the Noxious Weeds building. And then, yeah.
Come on. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you got Jim Weber. And for those of you that are listening, the question was about the debt service that's in household hazardous waste. And so the original building went up, it had, went up with 20-year bonds, and 2021 is the last debt payment, I think, on that building. And so our road and bridge bonds show up in a different place. These are building bonds. So it's, and then that'll go away unless we do a new building and bond it.
Okay, well, thank you.
Good question, good answer.
I have a
And we're
question.
trying to expand, you'll hear more about this Tuesday, we do the CIP, expand HHW, and I think it's gonna have to be put off a year now from the way everything's going. But but the building's paid off, and so it's a good time to go to the expansion, which is needed, so FYI.
David, have a question on your impact of 3% cuts related to the storm drainage partnership with the city of Wichita. Is it, I mean, I think you got to be aware, I assume that the city's going to have budget problems anyway, so maybe if there's a mutual reduction in that, and this is mainly for the big ditch, or is this overall?
Yes, that's entirely possible. Scott, if you're on the line, the question is about, or comment is about Wichita also possibly having cuts just like the county at 3%. Do you have any idea on that, Scott?
I have not discussed it with the city of Wichita yet, but that's something that we're going to have a conversation on to see if they'd be willing to cut their budget by 3%, probably in contractuals, to make up the lost revenue.
Are we under a statutory obligation on annual funding for is there a number on annual funding on the big ditch?
Scott, the question is, are we under any statutory obligation for funding?
No, we aren't. It's just they usually just establish the budget, and we pay whatever they request. And so this is a time that this would be a time that we negotiate how much we desire to pay.
They meaning City of Wichita?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I know it's been a great partnership in the
It has.
past, and so it might be a mutual area for both
And
agencies.
I think most of you also know the Corps of Engineers comes up from Tulsa once a year and looks at the entire floodway and makes comments on anything that might need to be done, and then we factor all of that in and work to get it done.
Right. Didn't this past year we have a couple of extra projects in there?
We did, and they paid quite a bit of money for them too.
Who, the Corps did?
The flooding messed up a couple of places, and then we got some federal funding.
Oh, good. That was federal, a lot of federal funding. So it wasn't our pocket yet.
Well, do you remember,
Little
was
bit
any of it
matching.
ours, Jim?
We probably had some
A
matching.
piece?
Started out being ours, but the feds are going to pick it up. It hasn't happened yet.
Is it
It's about $1
100%?
million. 100%.
100%
No,
federal.
That's good news. Thank you. Thanks. Because those are pretty good chunks of money.
Yes, they were. I don't
They were
remember
pretty
the
good
amount,
chunks.
but it was large.
Even the annual maintenance is pretty chunky. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you. Thank you, David, for the presentation. A couple questions. First question is, when do we discuss the solid waste fee? Is that going to change this year? And is that something we do during the budget talks? Or every year, it seems like we have a solid waste fee discussion. And I know I think it was last year, year before, it went up to $6.88 per parcel. And I don't know, we anticipate other programs. Some of that $6.88 was for some storm storm damage mitigation, if you will.
Well, Yeah, we did, what you're talking about, we did use that for Deer Lakes Estates and that creek right behind it. And it was a great use for that because that damage occurred during the tornado at Oaklawn. And that was how you could use that fund. But Lauren, you want to comment on the date on that?
Commissioners, you'll see that in mid-June,
Okay.
but it hasn't been determined what the fee will look like yet.
Commissioner O'Donnell, did you have a question?
I have one other question as
Oh,
well.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I don't know when we're gonna, this probably be a Tuesday discussion as well, but at least to let you know I'm thinking about it, and I'm going to raise the issue of a pug mill once again. I know we've got to maintain our roads, and I don't know what the plan is. And this is gonna be like the third or fourth year I brought this up now, that we need to have a plan. And the pug mill we had used to maintain those roads is no longer usable, and I don't know what the plan is. But at some point, it might impact your budget in other ways, because the pug mill does cause your staff labor, and how we maintain roads is impacted in the budget, not just by the equipment. So it has to be part of a comprehensive discussion, whether that is today or on Tuesday. We have to have a plan on what we're going to do with these roads. 150 miles at least of those roads must be maintained. I don't know what the plan is.
Everything you just said, Commissioner Howell, is exactly correct. And I think we actually have a presentation ready to do that, and it was going to be on a Tuesday staff meeting, but with this all happening with the pandemic, all of that is postponed, but we have a presentation prepared for that.
Well, doesn't that impact the budget that you're presenting today?
It could.
So
Depending on the alternative that's chosen.
All right. I guess we need to at least have that decision figured out between now and when we adopt this budget, obviously, or before last update, because I think this is going to be a significant decision for the county commission this year. We have to do something.
I think you'll see some money in the CIP for coal mix roads coming up next Tuesday, but that's just, how it's going to go is going to be a commission decision. And, but you're right, it needs to be decided one way or the other.
Lorian, when is our CIP discussion with the commission?
Tuesday.
And let me get with Lorian and Lindsay and see if we can't maybe expand the time on that to at least give time to discuss that topic it seems appropriate we do it during the CIP discussion. So Commissioner, let me get with staff and we'll try to create some time in that schedule to discuss that topic.
I'm just noticing we haven't discussed potential staff meeting at some point, but I see with Tuesday, we don't start until 1 o'clock. I would suggest this requires its own scheduled discussion. It might be an hour or longer to get this discussion done. And I don't know if we can do that during just it's not a small discussion. This is a big discussion. We've got to talk about this. So I would suggest we have a staff meeting somehow, if it's in this format or whatever it would be, but we need to have a dedicated time for that topic.
Okay. We'll look at Tuesday earlier.
I would prefer Tuesday staff meeting to discuss it. That would be my preference.
It's ready, isn't it?
We can get there.
It's almost ready.
Well, you got plenty of time. It's Tuesday, so. there you
Well,
go, Jim.
we're also working on the CIP presentation, but hey, we do whatever everybody wants, we'll make it happen.
I might suggest we do the CIP presentation and then drop back and look at the pug mill. I think that sets up some issues that we need to talk about before you talk about the pug mill.
Let me look at the
Cart
calendar.
for the horse.
Let me look at the calendar on Tuesday, and if the druther would be to do CIP discussion and then go right into Pug Mill, let me just look at this calendar and see what it'll yield.
Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Chairman. In light of recent events, is a pug mill something that could be put off for a year?
That'd probably be a discussion to have.
That's a discussion
the
I'd like to
discussion.
have.
So,
My personal opinion is that if you push this off, it's like pushing off a road repair. The consequence of that is more expensive later on. And so I think that the longer we push this off, we're not just saving money. In fact, my opinion is it's going to cost more money if we don't make this decision sooner than later. And that's been my urgent plea for this commission for a couple of years now. We've got to solve this problem. And by pushing this off, I've even suggested, again, in terms of a CIP discussion, I think that this is an appropriate use of debt. If we need to buy a pug mill, which is equipment, on a CIP, as a CIP proposed, planned debt to get this equipment in our possession, in my opinion, that's an appropriate use of debt because it ultimately saves money to the county. It shows, if you will, a coordinated plan on how we're going to take care of these roads. And by not taking care of that situation sooner than later, we're just simply adding expenses to ourselves down the road. We have to take care of these roads.
Mr. Dess?
Go ahead, Michael.
Are you sure? Okay. David, just wanted to thank you for presenting this. Appreciated the breakdown of what the 3% cuts would be, and I will wait until the meeting on Tuesday to see what your capital improvement plan looks like.
Okay.
And I also want to thank you. I think I agree that we need to hear the CIP first and find out exactly what they've got in the CIP. But I don't know that we want to delay too much beyond that, the discussion on the pug mill, because I think it's a valid discussion that we ought to have. But we need to know where we're at with the CIP before we go into that.
How about the thought of, could we do the CIP, Commissioner Howell, would it be all right if we do the CIP Tuesday and then set up a staff meeting the next Tuesday for pug mill only?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm fine with that. My concern is that we're going to get to a point this year, again, we're going to say, there's no time, we don't understand it, it's complicated, whatever it would be. We've had excuses year after year after year. And I think this is our chance, and this has been in the back of my mind consistently. When we talk to David Spears, it's always in my mind, we've got to have a plan on these roads. And this has been years now, I've been bringing this up. And we're still not there. So I don't want to find a reason this year to say, we don't understand it, let's kick it back down the road again. This is critical. It's critical we've got a solution here. And so I want to say, this is our time to spend the time, whatever's needed, to get this solved. And so I don't want to, I'm fine with whatever.
I agree with
However
you.
you want to do
So
it.
let's-
That's fine with me.
And I think I'm picking up from staff that they may not be ready as soon as Tuesday. I think if they had the extra few days after the CIP to really do a plus and minus, pug mill versus regular maintenance versus options, I think they could have a more.
Mr. Chairman, I support
prevent-
that. My only concern is, I think the budget he just presented and the CIP he'll present on Tuesday will be impacted by that discussion. So we're getting some information that's going to be almost immediately amended if we make a decision on how we're going to solve that problem.
Yeah, and keep in mind, Tuesday, the CIP, we just present, you don't approve, and it's for you to look at everything in that, and I'm sure we'll get comments back from all of you of what to change or what to add, what to subtract, and then it doesn't get approved until the budget in August. So I think it can get addressed.
Okay, I'm fine. Just please understand the urgency of the topic. Please, let's make sure we get this done this year. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? David, thanks you and Jim please thank your staff. You guys, you're in another building. We don't see all your staff often, but, except at the hot
Okay,
dog.
well, I'll just say for all of the staff out there, you couldn't hear Chairman Meissner, but he's thanking all of you. Thank you.
Most all of you.
Well, most all of you.
Thank you. Thanks again. Okay. Lauren?
Chairman, one quick comment. Since we talked about City of Wichita, they're going through, as we all know, their budget schedule is very, very similar to ours. They are having similar hearings in front of their electeds. I don't know if Mr. Layton was able to dress rehearse his budget, because we used to do it almost at the same time. I don't know with COVID if they had time to do that or not. But I will tell you that he and I have been in some communication. We do a lot of activities, and we have a lot of partnership with the City of Wichita on a number of fronts. And I'll give you an example. Laura Forshee had put in for 10 additional 911 positions this year for the 2021 budget to accommodate a new WPD channel, a central channel in the police department budget. And I knew with the way our budget was shaping up that it was going to be problematic for us to add this particular year 10 positions. So I notified Mr. Layton of our problem, and that we probably would not be including it in the budget. I didn't know what the commission would decide, and we haven't had the decision package discussion yet. But that's the kind of communication that we are trying to have back and forth when we're not talking about COVID, which is what we spend most of our time doing.
Right.
But it's important that as we impact external partners, especially the city of Wichita, that we have good communication with them and that we jive our budgets together. So I will reach out to him today just based on our big ditch discussion and see where they're at. But I just think it's important for the commission to recognize that there's a council over there going through the very same thing you are. Now, we have good communications, especially this year,
Sure.
with what's happening and potential reductions on both budgets, so.
Well, I would agree. I think that's good to know because, I mean, the big ditch is just one partnership of shared expenses. So I'm sure there's many others. And so it elevates our thinking to, if there's mutual cuts then that are reasonable and available, they don't know what their income is going to be either. Nobody knows what the revenues are going to be by the end of the
Lindsay
year.
has had a number of discussions with Mark Manning.
Good. Okay.
We have compared notes and are trying to communicate liberally back and forth across the street.
Okay. How about other comments? Any before we? Lauren?
We're done until 1 o'clock.
Okay. We will see you all back at 1 p.m. Thank you, everybody.